So we're less than 10 days from the Nintendo Switch 2 launching worldwide, and there's just a lot of drama going on right now, a lot of news coming out, so I wanted to break it all down in this video. So today we are going to be discussing Nintendo Switch 2s popping up at major retailers, Nintendo getting a bit defensive about their video content, and a lot more news as well. So we have a lot to get into today. But before we get started, I would really appreciate if you would like this video and subscribe to the channel, and you could even click that notification bell and turn on all notifications. I will be unboxing and reviewing a Nintendo Switch 2 when it launches, so you're not going to want to miss that. But anyway, let's get started. So the first topic that we have today is that the Nintendo Switch 2 is seemingly popping up at major retailers, specifically Target, and we are seeing it kind of in very unsecure locations, and one photo specifically went viral on X, and it shows Nintendo Switch 2s in a cage on the sales floor of Target. And it's not very responsible of the employees in my opinion, because all that somebody would need to do is drag that cage out of the Target or break it open, or some dishonest employee tries to steal one. And I made a YouTube short yesterday and I predicted that somebody would definitely get their hands on this console before it launched, because we do know that the media are not going to be getting a console before launch because there is a day one patch update that is supposedly preventing the Switch 2 from working. And it appears that my suspicions were correct, because right before I started filming this video that you're listening to right now, I went on X and lo and behold, somebody had unboxed a Switch 2 on YouTube and it was going viral on X. And that's just one day after we saw these photos of the Switch 2s in these cages at Target. So I'm curious how somebody got their hands on one of these, but there had to have been an employee or someone who grabbed one of these consoles pre-release and either unboxed it or sold it, and now we have this video, and apparently the Switch 2 does not work indeed because of that day one patch update. So yeah, we've got that, which is pretty interesting. I think Nintendo knew that somebody would definitely get one of these units before the console launched, and they wanted to make sure that they did not work until June 5th. And while that photo of the Switch 2 in the cage did go viral, there are other photos that have been floating around of Switch 2s outside of a cage and seemingly on a warehouse shelf or a store shelf in the back. And they seem pretty vulnerable, like somebody could easily grab one of them, so I would bet that there are going to be a lot of these units floating around before June 5th. Anyway, on our next piece of news, the Nintendo Today app, which is an app that came out in late March. It's not very old, but it basically has been showing Switch 2 clips every day and unreleased footage that isn't available anywhere else, not on Nintendo's YouTube channel or any of their socials. So we're getting these clips, and people have been recording them and then reposting them on social media, and now we're seeing that Nintendo is actually making sure that you cannot screen record from the app. Now, of course, this is not stopping people. They are finding different ways to screen record this footage, and it's still all available on social media, so you can still watch it there, even if you do not have the Nintendo Today app. By the way, I would highly recommend downloading the app if you haven't, because there is a lot of cool stuff on there. I've been having fun with it every day, and I'm pretty sure you will too if you like Nintendo. On to our next piece of Nintendo news. If you do not like the idea of using your Joy-Con 2 as a mouse because they're too thin or for whatever reason, Nintendo has you covered. So we found out a while ago that you can use any USB-C camera with your Switch 2 and still video chat or play games that use the camera, like Mario Party Jamboree Switch 2 Edition with Jamboree TV. That supports the Switch 2 camera or any USB-C camera. But now we are finding out that any USB mouse will work with the Switch 2. So if you have a mouse that you really like using and it's just more comfortable in your opinion than a Joy-Con, now granted most people have not tried the Joy-Con 2, but if you think that a USB mouse that is bigger will be more comfortable, then you can use it with your Switch 2. So I know that there are probably some people who will prefer using a regular mouse over a thin Joy-Con 2, which is probably not as comfortable as a regular mouse. Okay, so on to our next piece of news. So, a while back, I had heard that the Nintendo Switch Online N64 that's in the expansion pack would be supporting Rewind and a CRT filter, but today in the Nintendo Today app, we actually got confirmation showing it off, and we also got info that button remapping will also work, like in the GameCube Nintendo Classics, for Nintendo Switch Online plus expansion pack on Nintendo Switch 2. This is something that I've wanted for a long time, but I didn't think would be added, because if you have ever played the Nintendo 64 on your Switch, you will very quickly notice, or not notice at all depending on how much you used it on the NES, SNES, Game Boy, things like that, if Rewind is there or not, and that's something that was just strangely missing. And Nintendo is finally adding it, but it's exclusive to Nintendo Switch 2. I'm glad they're adding it because I exploited that feature a lot on the other services, but N64 I really couldn't, but now I can. And then we also get the CRT filter exclusive to Switch 2, so if you really liked the way that it felt to play N64 on a CRT and you really want that experience, then Nintendo has your back because they are adding a CRT filter to the N64 Switch Online. And then just like the GameCube coming to Nintendo Switch 2, we also have button remapping on the N64 for both Switch 2 and Nintendo Switch. If we look at the video, hopefully I have it playing for you. Not sure if I can get it because, again, Nintendo is not letting you screen record the Nintendo Today app. But if you really don't like the arrangement of the buttons on the N64, you can now remap them on Switch 2. Finally, I want to explain Nintendo's updated end-user license agreement, which are basically the terms you agree to when you start using your console, and they basically tell you what you can and cannot do with the operating system and your Nintendo account. Now, I'm going to read you the terms of service to better explain how this will affect you as a consumer, because chances are if you own another console, particularly a PS5, then these updates probably will not affect you too much, but I'm gonna read the clause that really has everybody mad from the user license agreement. So this section says, quote, "Without limitation, you agree that you may not A. Publish, copy, modify, reverse engineer, lease, rent, decompile, disassemble, distribute, offer for sale, or create derivative works of any portion of the Nintendo account services. B. Bypass, modify, decrypt, defeat, tamper with, or otherwise circumvent any of the functions or protections of the Nintendo account services, including through the use of hardware or software that would cause the Nintendo account services to operate other than in accordance with its documentation and intended use. C. Obtain, install, or use any unauthorized copies of Nintendo account services, or D. Exploit the Nintendo account services in any manner other than to use them in accordance with the applicable documentation and intended use, in each case without Nintendo's written consent or express authorization, or unless otherwise expressly permitted by applicable law. You acknowledge that if you fail to comply with the foregoing restrictions, Nintendo may render the Nintendo account services and or applicable Nintendo device permanently unusable in whole or in part." So basically that last sentence right there is saying Nintendo has permission to brick your console or make it unusable if you do not comply with the above terms. Now, I don't love this policy because Nintendo would have the legal ground to brick your console and make it useless if you did install software that was not intended for your Switch or Switch 2. But if you are a general consumer who is using your Switch or Switch 2 for its intended purpose and you're not actually modding it or installing software that was not meant to be on it, then this policy does not matter at all because Nintendo cannot actually brick your console unless you are intentionally installing software and you actually are successful at doing it and they detect it and decide to brick your console. So essentially, in a nutshell, what would have to happen is you install software that's not meant for your console, Nintendo has to notice that you're doing it, they have to care that you're doing it, and then they have to decide to brick your console. It's a lot of steps for them, and it's pretty unlikely that it would happen unless emulation is actually a huge problem on the Switch 2. To the 1% of people who actually want to mod their Switch 2 and know how to do it, then I would just recommend buying a PC handheld. The Switch 2 is probably not for you. Now, I've had a few people in my comments section who are saying that Sony and Microsoft have similar policies to what Nintendo is enforcing here with this license agreement. Now, I wasn't able to find those terms, but if anybody would like to help me out in the comments section, I would definitely appreciate it. But from what I was gathering, Sony basically bans you from PSN, and if you don't know, PSN is very vital to your PlayStation actually working, because a lot of games require downloads, and if you don't have online functionality on your PS5, it's almost as if it's bricked because a lot of stuff just won't work. You'll never be able to resell that console because nobody would ever buy it. I've also been seeing a lot of negative worst case scenario comments saying that Nintendo would brick your console if you just plug in a third-party charging adapter, and Nintendo would get sued like crazy if they actually did that. That's not happening. You have nothing to worry about as a consumer. It'd be absolutely ridiculous and very illegal if they did this, because the license agreement does not reach that far. A console could really only be bricked if you are intentionally messing with Nintendo account services, as this license agreement states. But anyway, that is all of the Switch 2 news that I have to share today. Do you think that Rewind should have been on the N64 for Switch Online, on Switch 1 all along? Let me know down in the comments, and I would really appreciate if you would like this video and subscribe and turn on post notifications so that you don't miss my unboxing and review of Nintendo Switch 2. I've also been posting a lot of Nintendo Switch 2 updates and Nintendo stuff on my X account, so go click on the link in the description and feel free to give me a follow over there if you like Switch 2 updates. But anyway, thanks for watching and have a great day.